Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're diving into something that is honestly a true modern marvel. We're looking at how an entire nation literally engineers its own survival every single day against the relentless power of the North Sea. It's this incredible story of sheer willpower, insane engineering, and just a constant, ongoing battle with nature. Okay, let's just kick things off with a number that is, well, it's staggering. 26%. Right now, as we speak, 26% of this country should be entirely underwater. Yet somehow, remarkably, 17 million people are living there anyway. They're going to work, raising families, and building cities in a place where the ocean is quite literally towering right above them. To really wrap your head around how bizarre this geographical anomaly is, just ask yourself, how does a massive cargo ship legally have the right of way while sailing directly above a highway? Well, it happens because these cities actually sit in a giant hole, up to 7 meters below the surface of the ocean. So literally, one single wall stands between a normal daily commute and absolute destruction.
Section 1. The 1953 Wake-Up Call, a Night of Catastrophe.
Because, you see, this mind-bending infrastructure didn't just happen by accident. On January 31st, 1953, a storm formed south of Iceland and drove straight into the Netherlands. At 4 a.m., while whole villages were fast asleep, the dikes simply broke. The sheer speed of this was horrific. An entire inland sea was created overnight. 150,000 hectares were suddenly underwater, and tragically, 1,836 people never woke up. One village alone lost 305 people before dawn. Amidst all this unbelievable chaos, people took incredibly desperate measures. In one instance, a mayor actually ordered a captain to ram his physical ship right into a crumbling dike just to plug the hole. And that single, split-second decision, it saved 3 million lives. Just 17 days after this historic flood, the Dutch government declared 2 words, never again. And with that, they launched an almost impossible plan.
Section 2. Brute force and steel walls, sealing the coastline.
So their initial philosophy was basically just sheer brute force. The goal was to shorten the coastline by 700 kilometers. They didn't start small. They built a 32-kilometer wall straight across the violent open ocean. To pull this off, they literally vacuumed up 36 million cubic meters of the ocean floor. Because plain clay would just wash right away, they sunk enormous woven willow mats for a foundation and then hand-stacked basalt, the absolute hardest volcanic rock, right on the face of it. For the final stretch, they were fighting a 5-knot tide, just waiting for that exact moment of slack water, that brief pause in the tide, to dump the final materials and close the gap forever.
But wait, they didn't just block the sea, they claimed it. They actually reached in and pulled an entire province, Flevoland, right out of the mud. To do this, they've been running 3 massive pumps non-stop since 1942. But of course, draining land creates a new problem, right? The soil shrinks and sinks. So they had to engineer the soil itself, using a process called controlled compaction. They deliberately keep just enough water in the drained soil, so the newly exposed land doesn't just collapse in on itself.
Section 3. The autonomous megastructures, the machine age.
But here's the catch. After decades of all this brute force, they realized a huge problem. Solid dams lock out the sea, sure, but they were literally destroying every living thing inside those estuaries, turning thriving ecosystems into dead zones. So, they made an incredibly bold decision. They scrapped their solid dams. They completely started over, spending 10 years and $2.4 billion to build a system of moving gates that lets the tidal water flow naturally, closing only when a storm actually threatens human life. And when you look at the sheer scale and variety of these autonomous megastructures, it is absolutely wild. You've got the Eastern Scheldt spanning 9 kilometers with 62 gates. You have the Maasland Kering with these massive swinging arms, and the Ramsbowl using Kevlar and rubber. Each one of these beasts was designed for a highly specific, seemingly impossible task. Take the Eastern Scheldt barrier, for example. To build this thing, they had to cast 65 concrete piers on a man-made artificial island. Then they lifted these 18,000-ton monoliths onto the seabed using GPS to get absolute millimeter accuracy. Finally, they had to thread 480-ton steel gates between these piers in the middle of a racing ocean current with only 50 millimeters of clearance. I mean, 50 millimeters! That is a microscopic margin of error in the middle of the raging North Sea.
Now, over in Rotterdam, protecting Europe's busiest port required an entirely different machine. They couldn't permanently block the shipping lanes there, so they built 2 arms, each heavier than the Eiffel Tower, pivoting on the world's largest ball joints. Hollow gates float out, swing freely to meet in the center, fill with water, and then sink right to the riverbed. And the wildest part of the whole shebang, it is commanded entirely by an autonomous computer named Boss. 0 humans decide when to close it, it just does it.
Section 4. Engineering with nature. The plot twist.
So massive steel and concrete megastructures are great, but they weren't exactly affordable for tiny inland villages. This led to a huge plot twist in their philosophy. Engineers began to work with nature instead of against it. For the Rumspol barrier, steel was way too expensive, so they built what looked like armadillos, 3 completely hidden rubber tubes lying flat on the riverbed. When an alarm sounds, they inflate into a 10-meter-high Kevlar and rubber wall in just 1 hour. During one massive storm, this flexible barrier successfully held back an 8.2-meter surge, with just 900 millimeters of safety margin to spare. Talk about cutting it close.
They even completely flipped the script on how they build and maintain their coastlines. The old method meant bringing in heavy machinery to add sand every 4 years. The new method, it's called the sand motor. They basically just dumped 21.5 million cubic meters of sand in one spot. That's literally 20 years worth of material at once. Then they just walk away and let the natural power of the North Sea's waves distribute millions of tons of sand along the coast for free. Work smarter, not harder, right?
This whole philosophy shift really boils down to this one idea. Don't build higher walls. Lower the land beside the river. Give the flood somewhere safe to go. After decades of fighting water with rigid walls, their modern philosophy is all about making room for the river.
By putting this idea into action, they dug a 9-kilometer new river channel directly through farmland. Doing this dropped the flood peak by exactly 27 centimeters. Now I know, 27 centimeters might sound like a tiny drop of the bucket to you or me, but in a country situated entirely below sea level, 27 centimeters is quite literally the difference between a dry, thriving city and an absolute catastrophe.
Section 5. The Fortress. 90 years of engineered survival. Every single barrier, every single failure, and every success taught the next one. This all culminated in January 2023 when a massive storm triggered the autonomous systems and all the barriers across the country closed in perfect computerized coordination. The result of all this? 0. Because of 90 years of relentless, evolving engineering, 0 is the number of flood deaths the Netherlands has suffered since that fateful night in 1953. It isn't because the storms have stopped. It's because an entire generation of Dutch engineers built a literal fortress against the ocean. The North Sea has tried, and it has lost every single time since. But here's the thing, the water's always there. The ocean never stops waiting. As climate challenges and sea levels rise globally, the big question is, what can the rest of the world learn from the country that shouldn't even exist? And more importantly, are we ready to build our own fortresses?